What is going on, everybody? Happy Friday morning and welcome into the latest TDR Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, gearing up for a long weekend, Labor Day weekend, the unofficial, I should say, end of summer weekend. But before we do that, we're going to finish strong here today. So we all know we got the announcement earlier this week regarding rescheduling. I know there's a few people that have been, not a few, but a lot of people have been asking about what's the timeline, what's next, are they casting doubts? Well, we want to bring on Adam Goers back to the podcast, who was very confident that he felt an ALJ hearing would not take place when he was on the podcast last week. However, that's changed. Why did it happen? Well, we're going to find out. So we welcome in TDR co-host Anthony Varell. Happy Friday morning, finishing strong here. Hot topic to say the least, but lots to learn from. And I know you've been busy behind the scenes talking to a lot of people on what next and getting a better understanding as to what this timeline looks like now that the DEA came out with their announcement this week.
Yeah, it was a busy week. A lot of mixed reactions, a lot of I told you so. There's a lot of vitriol from certain people around here. But, I mean, we march on. We march forward.
Yep.
Still got a lot of ballot initiatives coming up in November. I mean, the groundswell of progress that the industry's making on a state-by-state basis hasn't been stunted. We now just go to an ALJ hearing on December 2nd and then take it from there.
I think it's worth noting, too, in a few stories that this, for the most part, has advanced actually rather quickly. I know we're 12 months into this where the HHS originally came out with a recommendation, but putting things into perspective, I think it's still impressive with how far this has advanced. Obviously disappointed that we're hoping to get an announcement prior to the election, but a lot of things we're hearing and moving still, so a lot of things to figure out and sort out and understand. So with that, let's welcome in Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs from the Cannabist, Adam Goers, back to the podcast. Happy Friday. Good to see you.
Happy Friday, guys.
How's it going?
Heading into Labor Day. Excited for the convo today.
Yeah. And you guys had a great conversation while I was away last week. And let's face it, a lot's changed. We had an interview with Nancy Mace earlier this week. Great interview. And she's like, yes, this announcement's going to happen prior to the election. That interview became old within about 45 minutes because the DEA came out. So I was a little disappointed on that because, you know, let's face it, anytime you get people like yourselves on and have that kind of information, it's great to know. However, in that case, and I think a lot of people are asking the question, you felt confident that an ALJ hearing would not take place. It happened. It was announced. So what do you think was missed? What did we learn in all this? Like, where is this coming from? Because I think a lot of people want to get an idea or direction as to what happened.
Yeah. I mean, fellas, there's no other way to put it. You know, the decision to have an ALJ it's a huge disappointment. Let's be frank about it. And it delays a final rule by a matter of months. And those are months, let's be clear, for businesses big and small, social equity, otherwise they don't have. And we need 280E relief. And so I'll chalk it up. Monday was a very disappointing day. It was also quite unexpected. I don't want to say unexpected in the sense because we at the Coalition for Cannabis Scheduling Reform have been preparing for this, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But, you know, when it came down to it and how you were going to, you know, bet it, it was that it wasn't going to happen. And you talk about having Nancy Mace on, Wall Street Journal had a great piece with Earl Blumenauer, congressman who's been a leading champion of cannabis, and they had to put a little footnote in as it came out on Tuesday morning that his belief that the final rule would be coming out soon, and they had to note that in the meantime, since the interview, DEA has put forward an ALJ hearing. So I'd say it's been broad. It's been bipartisan belief that they weren't going to move this forward. Why I had strong confidence that they were not going to do an ALJ, more likely than not, was that, we with the Coalition, along with many other allied stakeholders that had good, fruitful discussions with decision makers in the White House and in DOJ, that a ALJ was not required, that they had done a fruitful and thorough comment process, that an ALJ was not required to get to a final rule. I think that we won that it wasn't required, but I think they decided that it was desired. And why they desired it was that it does make it more bulletproof as a final rule. And we've known this about Milgram and certainly about this attorney general, that they are dot I's, cross T's 2 times over, and have made this very clear. I mean, I know, Shatter, was it Anthony? You guys mentioned that it has moved, very fast.
Yes.
The president called for this to be expeditious. It's still being expeditious from everything we understand about what this process is going to look like. The fact that they are determining who are going to be the participants ahead of the hearing and not during the beginning of a hearing. I can, elaborate on that more, but I'll summarize and say it's a disappointment, guys. Very clear. At the same time, we are quite prepared for it. I can promise you.
Were you surprised? Were you surprised when the announcement came down?
Yes, I was surprised. 100%. Surprised.
So I kind of want to
prepared though too. So I know we'll talk about that part as well.
I kind of want to. You're harping on that word. I kind of want to key on the word preparing for this. So one of the things that I noticed in the filing of the hearing was that it emphasized that this is basically going to be anyone who could be harmed by rescheduling's day in court to do this hearing, not necessarily anyone that's going to, I guess, have their cause furthered by rescheduling. What is the industry doing to get prepared for this hearing? And do you think that there is going to be a platform allowed for industry participants or people that are for rescheduling to make the argument at this hearing?
Well, I'm going to point out one bit in this, which is that while they have scheduled a hearing, and I don't want to, create cannabis Twitter to go crazy on the idea that they're going to dismiss the hearing before it happens, but it is a possibility. They are still determining, who will have standing in this, and it's possible that they will come up with that no one does. That is a real. I don't think it's a major possibility, but let's be clear. If we're to chart this out on what's possible ahead, that is one measure on it. As to the harm piece, and that's kind of connected to that. But, I said prepared, which is you can read that we submitted in June, which is our petition to intervene in an ALJ hearing. It's 50 pages long. So when I say we've not, this didn't catch us by surprise. Maybe was surprised. And you can read that. It's the Coalition for Cannabis Scheduling Reform. We've got it right online. Along with our 100+ page comment to the DEA. I imagine what we hear is that in the briefings that we've gotten on what this is going to look like, is there's going to be a handful of different participants in it. There are going to go through. I mean, we will probably see someone like a Smart Approaches to Marijuana, or maybe an attorney general from a state that doesn't support it. We've also, in recent days, let's be very clear, there are, as much as there's the cannabis industry space that's really energized by this and needs this to happen, there are a whole lot of other stakeholders. And those are, 25 different governors and attorneys general. And let's be clear, there are a lot of other people that are preparing to line up behind us and beside us in this fight ahead on ALJ. So I imagine that the coalition will have a seat at the table. I also imagine a state or two on the pro side will be on there. ALJs.
I'm just curious to see how this is all going to unfold, because the data is overwhelming, and we all know this is political theater at this point. And I'd like to see some of these rebuttals, because let's face it, we've always battled this stigma around the industry, but a lot of these rebuttals have nothing to do with rescheduling.
I know cannabis is more potent than it was, but it's irrelevant. The measures that we're coming down to, and that an ALJ will look at, right? And I'm going to say are like layup level. Let's be clear. We're going to be running through the motions on this. Andrew Klein of Perkins Coie, a longtime, twice Biden drug policy advisor, judiciary advisor, longtime prosecutor at DOJ. He's leading our ALJ with the assistance of a former federal judge that's on his team. A former clerk to a Supreme Court justice. Like, we've got a great group that's been lined up for this. We're ready to go. But when it come down to it, there's a couple of measures that are in play here. One is their medical utility for cannabis, which FDA and HHS laid out thoroughly, that there are millions of Americans being treated with cannabis by tens of thousands of physicians for a wide range of medical conditions for which there's real data to show it. And the other one is, folks, wait for it, that cannabis is not as dangerous as fentanyl. So these are like two different layup pieces that are going to go. And sure, we're going to see some theater from some prohibitionists and so forth. And that's not my worry. What we're worried on is just making sure that we put forward our case right, making sure that we're technically correct, and most of all, that we put forward a hearing and ensure that the process is expeditious, like the president has called for. And I think we're on the right track for it. Even if we don't
as far as, I guess, the word standing precedent, I mean, these all get thrown around. I mean, I would like to think that the HHS report and the OLC memo are pretty strong things in our corner. Like, just how hard is it going to be to create an argument against those things that were rooted in fact, science, and professional medical opinion, as well as the Office of Legal Counsel, that, from my understanding, is very powerful as far as the orders.
Yeah, because to your point, in the court of law, if they bring up some of these issues, it's easy to answer to say that's not what we're asking for.
Well, and like, what we come back to is, where I think it started the conversation is talking about I's being, dotted and T's being crossed. And going through this evidentiary hearing, and this is what their motivation was out of DOJ. It was, we think the rule is bulletproof by it coming through this way. We scheduling it weeks after the election, the hearing makes it bulletproof, that it's not political. We don't think that those measures were needed. But I think, as I quipped, I think they decided they were desired in making sure that this was a lasting rule. And that's what we've consistently heard out of the White House now. And out of DOJ contacts this week, is that's why. Now, those same folks are saying, don't expect a, we're online here. I'm going to say shit show, right? That is not how they're leading this to be done. This is going to be orderly. It's going to be expeditious, and they expect to get to a final rule, soon after. Let's be clear, though. When we were looking and thinking about a final order being issued in the coming weeks, I'll use a royal we, because it seems about everyone and their mother on this, expecting this is going to delay it by a number of months. For that, I'm not satisfied with it, but we're prepared for the ALJ side. We've been prepared for, 8 months on this one, guys. We'll do a good job on it on behalf of the industry.
Okay. Are ALJs open to the public, or are they closed door hearings?
That's a darn good question, Anthony. Certainly open to the public. Now, I don't think that we're going to be live streaming the ALJ. How's that? But
no, I'd like to. If it is open to the public, I'll be there.
Proceedings that
if we have a say,
we'll be able to we'll be at. But again, I'll check on that. That's a darn good question, and I don't know the answer to it.
Jungle Java has a great question, and thanks, Jungle Java. Great to hear from you. Do you think that Kamala running instead of Joe had anything to do with doing the ALJ, less pressure to get it completed ahead of the election? Your thoughts on that?
I'm going to come up with my official and real answer, which is no. Could I join in speculation and say if there had been a difference in the ticket, would somebody have jumped on the table and yelled like hell that they were going to get it done before? Maybe, but I just think that's, very much speculation. Okay. The answer is no. I think this is the path forward. Kamala's been super consistent in wanting this done. In fact, guys, she was the biggest cheerleader and continues to be in the administration for this getting done, right? She has gone and went further than Joe Biden did every step of the way of rescheduling, basically just saying that she's for legalization. So she's been a strong proponent of this, and we have her in part to thank for the fact that it's gotten here. Running mates are part of the team, and she definitely was leading on this.
She actually wrote another question. Can you comment about the concerns being raised under Executive Order 13175 by tribal governments? Are you familiar with that?
I sat with I sat with the governor of a large tribal government last week. I don't often do that, just to say this was just kind of coincidental, but I'd heard that, and I talked to him about it, and had followed up with one of his staff folks. They don't see that as an issue. They're a big proponent of rescheduling. So I told them they can come in and get a hearing on this. I think it's let's just say this. It's not one of the 50 things that we're spending our time thinking about.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I know you guys had a great conversation last week, and there was conversations going on at the DNC while you were there. So saying that, and with this announcement, like, is it a concern? Is there any kind of pressure, any kind of conversations from what you're hearing right now in the latest this week about how much a priority this topic of cannabis is tailored around the election? Or is it just not even, I don't want to say a concern, but is it just not being talked about right now?
Listen, and I did a lot at the convention for, they're talking about reclassification, but also they're, wearing my day job, as an executive with the Cannabis Company, talking to, our key states and our leaders there in Virginia and Delaware, New York, New Jersey, and on and on and on. So I would say that within both of those different segments, right? Folks in the states are excited about this. This is a major tax driver. They're trying to make this work. And so it's on the top of everyone's mind. Everyone in those conversations also recognizes that the changes that can be made in state programs are window dressing compared to the loss of 280E. And so I think we have, I guess I'll be better here and trying to make an articulate point that we have very strong stakeholders in governors and attorneys general for this to happen. Congressmen and senators, strong stakeholders in this happening. So I just think those conversations a lot of times are one and the same. We're talking about state issues. And let's be clear, this week, I've observed and seen and been made aware of numerous touch points from governors, attorneys general, and congressional, members and leaders that are making it very clear to the administration, reminding them again that this needs to be finished expeditiously. And they're getting solid answers out of the administration that they're going to follow through and get this done. But let's be clear, we are not alone in this. Sometimes I know in the cannabis space, we've had a lot of ups, we've had a number of ups and a lot of downs, it seems sometimes. But we are not alone. Lining up there behind us are governors and attorneys general in their states that are with us, that are making their opinions known to this administration, and are also going to be there lined up beside us during ALJ hearing to come. So yes, to bring it back to the DNC, a lot of conversations going out there. Everyone knows this key issue for youth voters. I know in the Harris Walls campaign, at this stage in an election, is not talking a ton of policy, nor is the other side.
Right. No kidding.
About feelings. It's about getting done, hope. But I know that cannabis will play a small role, like other issues will play small roles in activating those voters ahead of the election. And I think the DNC showed it.
Expeditiously. You want to elaborate on that, what that means? I'm putting you on the spot.
The president has continued to call for that. On this, and I know that
I bring it up because Congressman Blumenauer basically said,
Kamala literally said it. Kamala on camera was like, DEA, get this done quicker.
Yep.
She's on the record. That's fact. That was on camera.
I've even forgotten. I forgot about that. She quite literally, and then came back to it like she was gonna smack it again, right? She said it repeatedly. Shad, I think what does that mean?
I'm just confused in how the political landscape works in Washington, because it's just like, on paper, yes, it's a DEA agency, but come on, this is like a president, and
everyone's got a boss.
I don't want to be.
Go ahead.
I don't want to be a pessimist here, but if you look at cannabis policy in Washington, you could argue that it doesn't work as far as everything goes. We are on the precipice of the biggest reform that we've seen. And I give merit to the Biden administration as well as what they've done so far to push it forward, because we've got
guys. We're not talking about we're not talking about one other key side to this, and I'm glad that you had the good Congresswoman on from South Carolina, who's somebody that we've engaged with closely over a number of years on this. This is let's come back to that cannabis is a nonpartisan, bipartisan issue. You even saw former President Trump putting two leaders in cannabis reform on helping lead up his transition team. We know from that very side that cannabis is going to have a positive reception in the forming of a second Trump administration. I think we can take that fully for granted with Kamala Harris's administration to come, if that's how the election goes. But either way, we're seeing change on this. We're seeing Florida, where I would not be surprised to see former President Trump say something positive about the ballot measure there in days and weeks. He's already said positive things about it. I don't
know if you saw his response yesterday to 4. He danced around it, but he didn't say he implied that he was going to vote yes on 4, not no. All he said is weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, which I think he's going to do the same thing with cannabis. He's not going to say yes, but he's going to say something like, I love the medical program. I love the medical program. The people want it.
Yes.
And allude to a yes, which I think is all we need. We need him to say what he said about 4 last night for 3. And then it'll be enough writing on the wall. I think, at least I hope.
Folks, the polling coalition members, Scott's Miracle Grow, did some great polling they released 2 weeks ago, in coordination with us. It showed that like 15% of swing voters in the states that they went after were supportive of keeping this as classified as Schedule 1. There's ups and downs. Certainly, this is a delay. This is going to push us out by a number of months. But we're going to get there. Science is on our side. The politics are on our side. And history's on our side in the sense that it's coming. And we're prepared to make sure, this ALJ goes well. We've been preparing for a long time. Again, Andrew Klein of Perkins Coie and his team are fantastic. And again, I'm optimistic, even if we have some setbacks along the way.
Well, Anthony and I will be there in our green and white Santa Claus outfits outside the hearing on December 2nd, and that'll be an interesting day, to say the least. Interesting couple of days, if not weeks. But yeah, I think it will be delayed. I don't think it's a hearing it's going to take within a day. It's going to be, if not a week, a couple of weeks. They'll have to break for Christmas, and you said coming into the new year. But I thought it was rather interesting to see Congressman Blumenauer say that he still feels very confidently that rescheduling will be announced before Joe Biden leaves office. I think that's pretty aggressive, but
it's a legacy. This is a legacy issue, folks. And these are not, I don't throw this around lightly, but these are things I know from people that are more and better connected on this. This has the president's attention too. Like, let me be clear on that.
Is there any chance rescheduling is, the final ruling comes down before President Joe Biden leaves the office on January 20th, do you think?
I still think there's a good chance of that. This is about legacy. It started with legacy. Let me be clear, with some strong stakeholders around the president. He was part of the, of the beginning of the war on cannabis. And I think a number of folks near and dear to him and around him want him to be, fully, the leader on, the beginning of the end. And we certainly know that rescheduling does that. More to come on this. I would expect to see, we're going to see some decisions on who has standing, if anyone has standing. Dates on this, could even move up. I wouldn't be shocked and surprised to see that too. And when we ultimately see the agenda on it, this is not going to be a clown trial. This is going to be, it's going to be expeditious according to what the president has continued to call for. It's going to be orderly. And I think we're going to see a final rule soon after. And the one small piece for those of us, all of us that have had to wait further, is, let's be clear, having an evidentiary hearing like this does make the final rule ever more bulletproof.
Yes. Yeah.
We just didn't think it was needed versus the time that, our interest in getting this out sooner. We were happy to defend it as a slightly weaker rule. This does make it more bulletproof. Nothing can really be said to eliminate FDA's assessment of medical utility when we know millions of Americans are using it. And let's also be clear, cannabis is not as dangerous as fentanyl. Those are going to be the measures and the hurdles, the small, short hurdles ahead for us in an ALJ.
Well, listen, appreciate the feedback and the update, and please reach out to us to get you back on the podcast if you do hear any news regarding what's been developing in Washington and what you're hearing, because I know a lot of people are interested in that. Before I let you go, man, what a voice you've got. I want you to say you're listening to Late Night Pillow Talk with Adam Goers on 97.1 Soft Rock.
Man, I really did miss my opportunity for radio. Huh?
It pays over $12,000 a year too. It's all yours. It can be.
You guys had a great. By the way, you had a great conversation with our leaders at the Cannabis Company with Jesse and David Hart the other day. It was great hearing on that, and look forward to being on with you guys again.
Yeah,
definitely.
They were great. And I know they're trying to implement a new strategy and plan. They announced that hard work was ahead, and they're in the middle of it right now. But so far, so good. Like I think a lot of the investor community is impressed with some of the moves that they made. And, full transparency, they are a client, not trying to promote the company in any kind of like positive way. It's just trying to tell it like it is. But, with all due respect, I think they've done a decent job. But obviously, trying to change the narrative and moving forward, because I know there's probably a few more announcements like that could be happening. But
let me say this from the side of somebody that's been with the company for a long time. Ultimately, the team that's developed in and around David and Jesse are energized by their leadership. And folks, we could have ended the call here and gone off on the Labor Day, but just as one of those folks that gets up every day to work and help make the Cannabis Company a better group for all of our stakeholders, shareholders, our employees, and our customers. We're energized by what they're doing. Results are showing themselves. I know in the coming months, there's going to be more to be seen. But I, for one, am confident in them and appreciate you guys taking a look at us.
Well, I think one of the things I mentioned this actually the other day is that you got to be good at what you do. But I think what this industry needs more of is people working with each other. And that's some of the things I picked up on with some of the, recent announcements that they've made with some of the companies that want to work with them. So, anyways, it's all good. But listen, I appreciate obviously the update, and let's please be in touch. Okay.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Right, thanks, Adam.
Bye.
Well, what's your big takeaway there?
Sounds good.
Is that it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm out of the business. I'm out of the business of speculating on any sort of expeditious process in this matter. I mean, I do agree with Adam. There are things that can happen to make it drop into line before Biden gets out of office. I saw Biden sitting on a beach last week, just being respectful. I think that this is going to be a couple of months ahead, and we're looking at probably Q2 2025.
At the earliest.
Yeah.
I agree. I think this happening before Joe Biden leaves office that's not happening. But it is what it is. Okay, we're going to jump in and into the wire. Are we bringing Guap in for this, or is he coming in for mic drop? I don't know if we...
No, Guap's coming in. Guap's coming in off the top for on the wire. Or
all
into
right.
The wire.
Well, let's welcome him in. What's going on, my friend?
Happy Friday. I'll try to do this in a full baritone.
Yes. Well, interesting feedback to say the least, but December 2nd, all eyes will be on that hearing. But I thought it was rather interesting to hear some of the support that they could get. This isn't just like potentially an advocate or a CEO of a company. Like, we've got real political figures that could potentially supporting this hearing, including governors, which is promising to say the least.
I would like to, before we get into these headlines, just a quick comment on what we just heard from Mr. Goers, who is very close to this process, by the way.
Yeah.
The thing that I think people overlooked, because when the announcement came through, the headline was enough to just set people off spiraling and the prices and going down and all that. And, so if you actually read the article, to answer Jungle Java's question in the comments, the DEA laid out the steps in the process, explaining that interested parties that may be adversely affected or aggrieved by the policy change must submit a notice of intent to participate in the hearing within 30 days of the publication of this filing that happened a few days ago. So within 30 days, people have to get their stuff together enough to see if they can, basically say it feels like an audition, right? Submit and we'll see if you have standing. So when you guys talk about scenarios and Q2 2025, just to introduce another scenario which Goers was talking about, it's that people submit their notice to participate and they say, yeah, well, none of these qualify. So I think maybe we were a little misunderstanding the process in terms of when does that determination happen, whether or not people can participate or not. Our assumption and what we were told, quite honestly, is it's sometime right after the comment period. This to me feels like that process of figuring out who can participate hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
No, which is why they're aiming for December 2nd. There's a long procedural process that needs to happen between now and then.
Yeah.
They're not just going to be like, all right, well, you get a hearing and you get a hearing and you get a hearing and sounds good, come up. They're not going to waste their time. Like Adam is right. And I don't even want to start to get into this conversation. There's a potential that they don't find any parties that truly have standing that are going to be harmed by rescheduling, because when you really get down to the brass tacks of it, rescheduling doesn't legalize marijuana. I mean, truly coming up with a coherent argument on being harmed by rescheduling. I'm not an attorney. There's a couple guys out there that know a lot more on this, and that were in the camp that an ALJ was inevitable, which in hindsight, they obviously were correct. But just keying off of those words of being harmed by rescheduling, I just don't understand how that can happen when you're not talking about legalization, access, really anything material, except for the fact that 280E drops away. We finally admit that it's not as harmful as Schedule 1 narcotics, and you're going to be able to enhance research.
Yeah.
If you could prove that any of that harms you in any way, by all means, go right ahead.
Well, you just outlined that you're not an attorney, but you know who is Eric Berlin from Denton's, and he's actually coming on Monday. It's actually going to be a pre-record, but Monday at 4:00, we're going to have the legal roadmap framework on whether or not he thought that this was a hearing that even needed to be announced. And now that it is, regardless, what is the timeline? To your point, Anthony, like, there's reasons why this was pushed out to December 2nd, and we asked those questions, and he'll explain what those are. And then most importantly, what the timeline is once the hearing gets underway, and if and when we could get an official ruling for rescheduling. So that's coming up Monday at 4:00. 4:00.
Because also, just to make a point, I know there was a letter by several state AGs that was making an argument against rescheduling. And if you actually read the letter, their arguments in that letter were on the pretenses of that rescheduling legalized cannabis. So, I mean, we're going to go in circles here, and I'll kind of stop at that. But anybody on the prohibition side or anybody on the contrary to Schedule 3 is coming at it from an angle of rescheduling equals legalization, and that's not going to hold up in a court of law.
Yeah,
it's not even fact. So I'd be curious to see how any of that transpires.
Yeah, that's just it, because, you can get lost in translation, as I keep saying, with some of these rebuttals, that some of the comments that were outlined during the comment period. But in a court of law, it's real definitive as to why we're here and what the real definition of rescheduling is. And a lot of the concerns have nothing to do with rescheduling, which is why I'm curious to see how long these hearings will last, because it seems like there's pretty much overwhelming evidence. But I'm not a lawyer. Eric Berlin is. We ask these questions. We'll have that information for you Monday, 4:00. Make sure to log on to get a better idea on your holiday, Labor Day Monday. So let's segue now into the wire. And here's something that the DEA and so the Washington should learn, is that one of the largest employers in the U.S., Home Depot, they actually are looking at cannabis a lot differently, as they're shifting their employees' drug testing policies to remove cannabis from pre-employment drug testing, which really gives a good look for the industry, and another reason why it continues to grow and the train has left the station, Guap. So I know this is probably something that you agree with, and we're probably happy to read this.
Yeah, it feels like the government is the last party, interested party, let's say, that realizes that everyone wants cannabis to be legalized, right? When you've got major corporations, like a few years ago, Amazon very publicly came out and talked about how they were dropping cannabis off their pre-employment drug screening panel. Here we have Home Depot. These are massive names. Strange that Home Depot CEO also supports Trump. That's just a side note. I'm not drawing any connection.
Both of their founders, too, keep in mind, Bernie Marcus and Arthur Blank are both highly conservative Trump supporters.
Good to know. Good to
So
know.
it's just a strange or weird footnote. But yeah, I mean, it's great to see. I mean, this is a long time coming. I mean, what you do on your own time, as long as you're not coming into work inebriated and you're unable to do the work, I honestly, the libertarian in me says, about damn time.
I also forget who said it, but a lot of the reasoning too, and it was done by it was Amazon the first time around. Jeff Bezos was like,
right,
what you do on your own time is your own time. And to be honest, the front end drug testing, especially as it relates to marijuana, highly limits the pool of people they can potentially hire. So by dropping that, they're now casting a huge net on people they can potentially be employing at their businesses, which is what I'm assuming is the reason for this move at Home Depot as well.
Is it more probable that people consume cannabis while at their job versus alcohol? I would say overwhelmingly yes. No? Or am I inaccurate to think that?
I don't understand the question.
Well, I'm just saying, like, some of the concerns that you guys bring up just with regards to what you do in your own time, like, this isn't even a topic of conversation. Like, we've legalized it federally in Canada, and this is stuff that we don't even think about. But in the US, like, do you think Amazon drivers and stuff like that would be more prone? Because, when
sure
you
as hell hope not.
Right. And my point is like, when you look at, like, you wouldn't even think about drinking alcohol while you're on your job.
It's common sense. People aren't walking around with alcohol. People aren't showing up to work drunk. People sure as hell aren't going to show up to work high. I can't speak for anybody else. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I tend to be a relatively responsible individual. I mean, I think coming to work under the influence of anything is stupid. Whether it's X, Y, or Z substance wise, you come to work intoxicated, you're probably going to get fired, and you probably don't want that person working for you anyway. But no, I don't think the legalization of cannabis is going to attribute to people going to work stoned whatsoever.
Safe to say more people are vaping on a job than slugging a beer, which I get, and I believe that. But
you always have a small percentage, right? I've worked in marketing agencies where I felt like I was the only person who wasn't high. A lot of computer developers, creative directors, graphic designers. It for many people, it can be something that allows them to focus. Again, I'm getting into some, pseudoscience here, but no, we're kind of getting off topic a little bit here. Home Depot, this is a big story. They're a huge employer. It's another big headline for the industry, along with Amazon. And it's about damn time.
Irish Avenger writes, Shad just outed Guap for being high right now.
I can honestly say I have never done one of these shows high. And I know that surprises a lot of people. I'm just sort of naturally a smiley, happy guy.
All right. Just a question, but yeah, I got off topic, but thanks for clearing the air. Not sure anybody was really concerned about it, but at least I know now.
If there was one job I could do.
Yeah. Let's move now to Tokyo Smoke. Who came up with this title? Tokyo Smoked. I love that. Did you? Nice job, buddy. They announced actually Canadian retailer Tokyo Smoke. Everybody knows this is probably the original OG of retailers in the cannabis space. They actually are closing 29 stores in Ontario based on an oversaturated market, and it's oversaturating is putting it mildly. Significant changes have taken place since the initial licensing basically was announced for the provinces back in, I think it was 2017 or 2018. But this doesn't come as a surprise, Anthony, because when we were in Toronto back in June, there are dispensaries and every single corner in Toronto, both legal and black market. So clearly an oversaturated market. This to me does not come as a surprise.
No, not at all. I mean, Tokyo Smoke was originally acquired by Haiku and then shipped off to Canopy, I think, in a $250 million all-stock deal. That deal wound up being, I think, worth about $600 million at the height of Canopy's stock run. Tokyo Smoke that was sold at an egregious valuation to Haiku, or it might have been a merger, if my memory serves me right, but at a crazy valuation, I think, before they were even selling weed. It was an incestuous transaction. On both sides. I mean, it obviously never materialized into a business that could make money. I know that they're closing 29 dispensaries, and I think they still have 150 plus, which now is not actually owned by Canopy. They divested to a group, OEG Athletic Entertainment or something. It's someone that also owns AFL, NHL, and a couple of other franchises in the United States. This doesn't surprise me, but at the same time, I don't understand how you can't sell weed. Like, it's a simple calculus here. You buy a product, you mark it up, and you sell it. Unless their costs are just through the roof, or they just can't compete, or they're just completely inept at operations.
All of the above.
Maybe all of the above. It's just a mystery to me whatsoever, or how a retailer can't inch out any sort of profit, and then they go into receivership.
Black market, man, is very competitive in Ontario. Very
at risk of pumping one of my favorites, High Tide. I mean, they have a discount club model versus a business model in Tokyo Smoke that was based on high-end stores, high-end prices, selling the same product that High Tide was selling at a lower price. So it's hard to compete when that's your business plan.
I think their business plan was creating. I think their business plan was what cannabis they thought it was going to be. Yeah. And High Tide and Canna Cabana is what it actually is, pivoting with the times. And we've heard that how many times, Anthony, where you got to change with the times and fast with this space. But what were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, Tokyo Smoke looked awesome out of the gate. I mean, it was like a premium dispensary, had a good brand. There's Haiku, and then there was another, I don't remember the name of it. There was another Canadian LP cannabis brand Doja. Doja. Yes. It was a Doja Tokyo Smoke merger, I think. And then that combined asset was then sold off to Haiku, which was then sold to Canopy. I mean, they had some pretty promising things on paper, like a lot of the Canadian LPs, I guess, did. And then just nothing ever materialized. And now we're here.
How many companies have looked awesome out of the gate? I mean, the parent company comes to mind, and look what's happening now.
Well, Bruce, Linton in those early days, he'd show up with his blazer with his tweed T-shirt on CNBC with Jim Cramer, and anything that seemed like that was associated with Canopy and the tweed brand at that time. Let's face it, it looked pretty hip and cool. He went after Martha Stewart. He went after Snoop Dogg. How could you not get excited about the industry and what could become? And here we are 6, 7, 8 years later. But man,
well,
Lauren Gertner,
Martha's. If it's a testament to Martha, I mean, Martha's still around. Her gummies are being sold on Juana's website. Yeah. So she's still in the space, and she's still alive and well.
Remember we spoke with, ran into Bruce in Toronto back in June, and smartest person he said he's ever come across, Martha Stewart, gave her a tour of the facility up in Smith Falls. And with a matter of like minutes, she was already kind of like breaking down what areas should focus on what to make it more efficient. And he just sat back and just listened. So definitely one smart cookie, but it's also smart cookie is Lauren Gertner. Imagine selling Tokyo Smoke before it even becomes legalized and you're selling weed. That's storytelling, right?
Yeah, it's a cautionary tale. Beware smoke and mirrors. Realize when you're being sold a bill of goods that's, it turns out to not be as advertised.
No kidding. All right, into the wire. TDR, Trade to Black podcast, Friday morning, wrapping things up. Our last headline involves Congressman Earl Blumenauer, which basically, in so many words, feels very confident that, as I said earlier when Adam was on, that he thinks that rescheduling, the ruling will come down before Joe Biden leaves the office. I don't think we really need to go into this too much more, but I think the overwhelming response and how we view this is that's aggressive thinking and not going to happen. But Glop, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, like Goers covered this one in the interview, really. But he actually said Blumenauer had comments after the hearing came out. He says it's incredibly disappointing to see the DEA drag their feet on an issue which has been a clear White House priority, he said on Tuesday. So, he's optimistic, but, is he super up to speed on the hearing process and how this is all going to play out? I'm not so sure about that. I'm a huge fan of his.
Yeah.
When he came out and gave that really impassioned plea on behalf of the industry, when he tweeted out essentially a list of demands, common sense cannabis policy, I was the first person to be standing and applauding. I just don't know if we should really, anyone who claims to know exactly when something is going to happen in cannabis has been wrong. Blumenauer is no different.
I'm not going to ask you the question, Anthony. Not going to ask you the question.
I'm over it.
State banking and the lame duck, Anthony?
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Was that it? I was just joking.
Also, quick heads up for all our viewers out there. If you gotten a chance to do so, please click on the QR code, lower right-hand corner. Yeah, this way. Sorry, get all mixed up here. Had some good information in the newsletter this morning involving earnings relating Canadian companies, MTL Cannabis, which reported first quarter record results, along with the Next Leaf Solutions, where you and I are going to be actually next week, Anthony, on location in Vancouver, BC, one of the premier extraction companies in the cannabis space. We're going to get a walkthrough of their facility. 75 global patents that they have. But we have a great takeaway on both of those companies' latest earnings. If you want to find out what it is, make sure to log on or click on the QR code, as I said, and subscribe to our baked-in newsletter. We very much appreciate it. As usual, make sure to smash that like button, leave lots of comments. Love to get your feedback on what Adam provided and whether you agree with some of the timelines as to what he outlined. That concludes Into the Wire. It's now time for Mic Drop. I haven't heard this music in a while. Arns, cue the music if you've got it.
Everyone got an hour. We're going to talk about Florida here. So the Amendment 3 vote on 11.5 sure feels like a proxy war for the entire legalization effort to me. Frank Luntz, conservative voice, trusted voice for polling, according to Don Murphy, summarized the Gallup poll, which we've got here to pull up, talking about overall support for legalization is 70%. Broke it down by age. Obviously, it skews younger, the higher percentages, and even broke it down by party. As Don pointed out, there are a lot of Republicans and GOP members that live in Florida, including Mr. Trump, that follow Mr. Luntz. And, the writing's on the wall there. Trump came out in favor of Amendment 4 just recently and alluded to his support of federal decriminalization and he said he's going to make a statement on Amendment 3, quote, fairly soon. There's that word again,
Soon.
But, I actually believe this fairly soon because there is an election coming up. So who knows what soon means? Everyone's wrong about predictions. Is Trump the kind of guy to look at polls like this and tap into his vindictive streak and stick it to Ronnie D and Kenny G? Ken Griffin and Ron DeSantis. We'll see, right? He's certainly surrounding himself with pro-cannabis people. We're living in an idiocracy. He just tweeted out a Photoshop of him as Superman in the Justice League.
Did he?
Maybe the tweet was Photoshopped. I'm being psyoped by Twitter, but it's we'll see Elon, Vivek, all as members of the Justice League. So think you're pretty smart, huh? It's like just unbelievable. There's an op-ed by Jake Hoffman, which totally dismantles DeSantis's arguments. And I'd like to point again that I believe these public-facing arguments like smell, it's a Canadian company that's wanting this, there's going to be a rise in prison population, public use, there's going to be access by children. All of this feels to me like just a massive misinformation campaign by the DeSantis camp. And the real reasons are probably a little more sinister. He's getting donations from the hemp lobby. It's business interests protecting their own interests. Also, it goes against the things I was talking about yesterday in terms of the ability to divide and rule us,
Yes.
the alcohol money. There's a lot going on here, but I really don't think. I think when DeSantis or the staff for Christina Pashaw is putting out these points, it's an amazing tactic to get you sort of distracted and arguing that point where the real string pulling is going on in the background.
Yes,
it's just too. I've never seen a more obvious sort of like politicians politicking example in my life. This is kind of gross.
Dankin former. He made a good comment. Continue your thought.
Yeah, I would just say I would encourage everyone to follow Smart and Safe Florida. I know we hear a lot from CEOs from Florida. We hear a lot from the DeSantis camp. I mean, there are people who don't live in Florida who are invested in the cannabis industry and the design. I'm talking about myself, who are interested in seeing how this all plays out. And it's not like we can't participate in the dialogue. So follow these people: DeSantis, Pashaw, Evan Power. Like and retweet things when you see them their arguments dismantled. Like and retweet things when you see Lex Fridman saying, I'm going to get to interview Trump. What should I ask about? I mean, these are the small things we can do, and when we feel somewhat powerless. And offline, I mean, we all have friends and family in Florida, and they're getting fed a load of BS by the DeSantis camp. Just make sure to give them a call and send them an email and get them to put a sign out or something. I mean, the good news here is Twitter's not deciding. Trump isn't deciding this, although him coming out in favor would really help. The people are voting. And when you put do you want to legalize cannabis on a ballot, unless they've been fed some really convincing BS, tends to be something that people vote for. So that's the only reason I can sleep thinking about this whole thing is the people are deciding, and hopefully the people are good at discerning what's fact from fiction.
Well, let's face it. We live in a day and age where if you're going to win an argument, what do you got to bring? Data. And that's exactly what you mentioned. We need some hard, cold facts regarding the tweet that you pushed out earlier this week, Anthony, which is reality. Versus just slinging mud and seeing what sticks. But happy to share that we've actually announced a partnership with Headset Data that we're going to be implementing a lot of that information, latest trends in key states, companies, what's selling, a lot of this information that we'll be implementing into our podcast beginning next month. We already have access to it now. We're going to have a lot of that information within our baked in newsletter as well. So some helpful information to give you a better idea as to where this industry is going and navigating. But yeah, I think a lot of it is, again, as we keep saying, political theater right now. And the best way to obviously convince people one way or another is facts, information, data. Anything else you guys want to add?
I'm good.
He's good. Guap, you good?
So good.
So good.
Talked
All right,
a lot.
gents.
Excellent show, gentlemen.
Enjoy your unofficial end of summer long weekend, Labor Day. Anthony, I'll see you in Vancouver, BC next week. We got Eric Berlin coming up on Monday. Fascinating interview with Wiz Buckley, the Top Gun fighter pilot, to talk about what happened with that whole Lycos fiasco, and that's coming out Tuesday. Good. And then we'll be a live stream a week from today. We'll be back, but we got to figure things out Wednesday. Might be doing something on location at a studio in Vancouver, but we will let you know either way by early next week. In the meantime, enjoy all your long weekend, and we'll see you guys all back here next week, okay?
See you, everybody.
See ya.
Light went up. Let's do it.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.